Hey everyone, and welcome to Game Dive, the conversation show where we look at one game each episode and have an in-depth discussion about the game's features and give our thoughts and opinions. I'm your host Perry, and this week I'm joined by Camp,
Howdy.
Mark,
Heyo.
and Evan.
Hey.
And to celebrate the launch of Animal Crossing New Horizons on Nintendo Switch on March 20th, we're going to be talking about the original Western release of Animal Crossing for the Nintendo GameCube. So that's the one that was released on September 16th, 2002, in North America at least. It didn't get released in the EU until 2004 for reasons I don't know. So that was a port and upgrade of the original game for the N64, which was never released outside of Japan. And Animal Crossing is, of course, developed and published by Nintendo and has a pretty huge following at this point, having seen 5 main series entries as of New Horizons, as well as a handful of spin offs here and there. And at this point, it's definitely one of their biggest IPs, one of their big selling points. But without further ado, let's just jump right into it. We'll start off by talking about the gameplay. And Kim, you want to give your thoughts on that?
Sure. I gotta say that first off, there's not a ton of game to Animal Crossing, but what there is, it's good game. All right.
Mhm.
Like there's no real enemies, there's no real bosses, there's no real difficulty. But somehow this game just keeps you playing. It just keeps you going on and on and on and on and on. It really is incredible the way it drags you in. And I think part of that is based off of the in-game calendar that is based off of the GameCube's actual real-time clock, which kind of gives you incentive to show up on every consecutive day and every special day, like days where there's fishing tournaments, or just regular holidays like Christmas or Valentine's Day and stuff like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think definitely the daily changes to the game are kind of what keeps you coming back. Like maybe, you'll find your new dig sites, or maybe there will be a new villager, new stuff in the shop. There's all kinds of reasons that the game makes you want to keep playing, which is a good thing, I think. It's I guess kind of an early model almost for a games as a service kind of thing, because it makes you feel like you have to keep playing, which is probably a good thing.
Yeah, there's never a good time when the game doesn't make you want to doesn't make you feel like you want to return to it, right? Where even if you get bored of the gameplay, it's fine. Just call her quits, shut her down, get back in there tomorrow.
But don't forget to save.
You also mentioned the games as a service sort of comparison there, and it's funny because the new Animal Crossing coming out, New Horizons, actually doesn't have a lot of future events in the base game. They're going to be added later in time, closer to the actual time of the events as a service where, it's think their reasoning there was that, they don't want people to sort of exploit and get ahead and see what's going on beforehand, but it was there in the GameCube version, all of the events throughout the year, all the, special days, they're all there, and it's kinda funny that Nintendo thinks that now it's more of an issue than previously where, you know, anyone could have gone back there in, was it early 2000s and skipped ahead to the fishing tournament, but I think the appeal of this game is, it's not that, you're trying to see everything immediately. So it's just an interesting thing that I noticed them, leaving out the events until a future time.
Yeah. Well, I think it makes sense to do it that way, actually, and their technology is at a point where they can do it that way. And I mean, if let's say obviously St. Patrick's Day just passed, like, why would they bother having that in a game when it's not going to come back for another like 365 days?
Well, because I imagine it probably doesn't, it doesn't take up that much, resources on the actual file to just have the, assets in place ready to go. I mean, it must be negligible.
And I guess it also adds to because like every year they can do something a bit different. Like you can just have the
That's
base.
what I was thinking too.
That's a good point,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like just have the base holiday, but then like every year it's like, oh, it's a new, I don't know, furniture set, for example, or something.
Well, I'd be interested to see what they do with it because honestly, and I mean, we're obviously still going to be time traveling around like we did in the old one, but
Ah,
one of my
actually, I don't think
biggest
you can time travel in the new one.
really,
Yeah,
even
because
if you
that
go
required
offline,
changing the, clock on the GameCube, didn't it?
it did. But can't you change the clock on your Switch?
No, I think it was just I don't know. I'm not sure how it works, but we'll see when it comes out.
Anyways, regardless, one of my biggest gripes about the Animal Crossing GC is like you have to play it for what feels like so long just for like once you're in it a couple of months, you're kind of just waiting for events to happen. Like for
Hmm.
fishing tournaments to only happen like one day a week in June and November is like I like fishing is one of my favorite things to do in Animal Crossing. And the only time there's fishing events are 2 months out of the entire year. Like I'm not gonna be playing that much.
Yeah, I think most players will, myself included, will run out of things to do way before they'll see most of the calendar, which is not necessarily a problem, but it feels kind of bad when you're looking through your journal and looking like see all these cool holidays that are, months away. And I know that the only way that I saw most of them was by time traveling just to go see what the event was like.
I mean, I think one thing that we're kind of forgetting about the game is that it's definitely not intended for constant sort of play with, min-maxing your time and getting all the stuff you need to do out of the way as quickly as possible just to get to an end game, right? It's
Yeah,
the
that's
game's
very true.
probably meant to just be played an hour a day, maybe, get a bit of fishing
Yeah.
in, earn a bit of money, talk to the villagers.
Yeah, it
But
definitely is, but like over a year,
yeah,
that's way too, like I haven't even ever played like a phone game or anything for over a year. I mean, obviously this will be a much higher quality product, but I mean, in order for you to keep constantly returning to something, it needs to be significantly different every time. And then if it's going to be like every week there's something different, sure, maybe I'll do that for a couple of months, but then I'm definitely going to be skipping things until Reddit or somebody tells me that there's actually an interesting event coming up, and then maybe I'll come back. But
I mean, I think I could say fairly confidently that, when I played it originally growing up and not so much going back and playing it again, but especially that first time, even playing the sequels, I owned the one on the Wii, City Folk. Even that one, I was a bit older, but both of them, I never found myself ignoring it. Like, I always found myself going back because what I'm looking for when I'm playing that is just relaxing. You know, it's not a downside to have something just be the same or similar each day, and there was always not so much in the GameCube, there was definitely a lack of unique interactions compared to the later releases, but there was enough that there was just something to go and do, and it was relaxing, and it was never supposed to be more than that.
I suppose.
I think now that it's on the Switch, which is more of a mobile, like upscale mobile platform, I think it's definitely going to be a lot more, I guess, accessible to players compared to like way back on the GameCube, right? You just have to go home and play it, and you only have a certain amount of times to like
Yeah,
access like Tom Nook's cannery or store or whatever.
yeah, exactly.
But like now being like on the Switch and how that is, you can be anywhere and have it with you and be able to access the game, at any time.
Yeah, I think that'll help. But just about the holidays still, I think the really just only unfortunate thing about it, which is really unavoidable, is just that real time has to pass in order to
Yeah.
reach like these new content bits, which is just the nature of having a game that follows time at 1 to 1, which it's good and bad.
Yeah, I would argue that personally, I find it refreshing. If I need a game that's got something ready to go right away every time I go on, I have 10, 20 other games that I can hop on that are more narrative driven or action driven or arcadey. I don't need that out of Animal Crossing.
True, but alternatively, there's also the issue with, what if you have to step outside and be a real person on a day that, there's a big event or something like that, right? And they're like, I
Oh
don't
shit!
have
I gotta get
time.
home and do this fishing tournament.
Yeah, I'm not and I have a confession to make. I'm not a real Switch gamer. I don't have my Switch in my fucking shoulder-mounted bag at all times, ready to
Yeah, I mean,
bust out a gaming session on some rooftop patio.
oh, you're doing it wrong, Cam.
Crucify me. I said it.
The game's definitely aimed at a demographic that has significantly more free time between 9 and 5 every day. It's, I don't think meant for, adults with careers necessarily, and as much as we can enjoy it or other people can enjoy it from any demographic, I think there's always gonna be a specific like, they have to pick, who is this going to be made for? Who are we focusing on here that can get the most out of this?
Trying to say I'm a grumpy old man?
Well, yes, but also I
Because you
think
right.
I think it's definitely aimed at children in a sense. It can be enjoyed by everyone, but in terms of people who are free to do all this stuff at, these required times, before Tom Nook closes the shop and all that, it's definitely kids who have that free time.
Yeah. Well, I kind of want to talk about Tom Nook's shop because it's kind of the central point for the entire game from like a gameplay perspective. At least in my experience, it it kind of is the gate through which all other actions in the game are permitted.
Trying to say his shop is a hub world?
It is no, not necessarily, but okay. The reason is you got to get your tools from there when it starts, and you got to sell your items there to make money, and you need money to buy more things. You need money to upgrade your house. I mean, just as the baseline objectives and the baseline gameplay loops. And the unfortunate bit is that when Tom Nook is closed, I often feel like I can't really do a lot because you don't have a lot of inventory space. You can't just be like, oh, I'll catch 30 fish and just hang on to them till tomorrow. If you're playing after 10 o'clock at night or before 9 in the morning.
Yeah, that's, definitely something I think they improved in later games. I think I remember in City Folk, if Tom Nook's closed, there was always like the museum you could go to that had the coffee shop, and then KK Slider would be there. It was always open a bit later, so it's definitely something they've improved on since the GameCube release.
Okay, weren't you able to wake up Tom Nook at night if you ever want to buy or sell stuff?
Yeah, so in this one, in the GameCube one, you can.
Yeah, that's what I was referring to.
Well, it's funny. I actually saw something recently that one of the differences between the North American release and the Asian release was that if you went up to Nook's store after it had shut down, it was I think maybe 10 o'clock at night or late at night. In the Asian release, if you banged on the building with your shovel 3 times or so, the lights would come on and you could go inside and you'd find him wandering around half asleep in his pajamas.
This is true in the GameCube as well, or
Yeah.
sorry, the Western as well, no?
Was it? I had never experienced it
Yeah,
myself.
I remember doing that 10 plus years ago.
No. You sure you weren't in Asia?
I hope so. I hope I wasn't.
Yeah, so I mean, that's something you can do, but that really strikes me more as an Easter egg than an intended
Yeah, there's
interaction.
nothing that tells you, "Hey, wake this raccoon up by banging your shovel off his store window."
Yeah. And so it really sticks out to me how sometimes this game feels like you can't really play it the way you want to some days if he's closed. Like if he's remodeling, he takes a day to do that. And I can speak from just my experience playing it these past 2 weeks that the first day that I played was on February 29th. And on the final day of the month, Nook holds a raffle. And when he's holding that raffle, he's not selling any items, and you can't sell any items to him. So that's like a day that's completely gone. And if you're trying to progress, and then the next day after that, he had just a shovel. So I bought the shovel. The next day after that, he had just the bug net. So I bought the bug net. And then the long and short of it is that you kind of get gated from the content in a way by
Time
time,
gate, yeah.
which can be a good thing for a new player. It's worth mentioning that you wouldn't really even realize this was a problem the first time you play it. So then is it a problem if you don't realize it?
Yeah, I don't think, Animal Crossing is a game that's meant to be gone back and started fresh and, build a new town with a new character. At least not as a key intention of the designers, but I think one thing we could talk about is the fact that you are limited to these tools where they could absolutely have limited them by just cost. There's nothing that says they couldn't have had all of them available from the start, and you can choose which one you want to start with. And, maybe it costs 1,000 bells, so you gotta earn enough money to get the next one, and then instead of having to wait and hope you get the one that you need in the store, which is no guarantee. I think once you get the, store improvements, when you get up to Nookingtons, all of them are available all the time, but
But at that point, what's the point? By the
yeah.
time you get to those upgrades, you've obviously got everything.
Yeah, I mean, at that point, you might want, like, a golden shovel or something, which, makes it a bit easier to get a second shovel, but, yeah, at that point, it's a bit,
I think at that
redundant.
point, it's more so like if you have like another family member or friend coming over to play the game, and like
And they steal your shop stuff.
yeah,
Well, I can also speak from my experience playing it probably at least 10 years ago with my brothers. And when we started, Nook only has the same stock every day for everyone on that memory card. And so
yep.
uh, my two brothers got the first two fishing rods and we're just going off, like getting all the fish, making a ton of money, and donating to the museum. And then I think I didn't get my fishing rod till maybe like the fifth or sixth day. And
Oof.
I don't know if that's an intended like interaction for people that kind of get snuffed, but the multiplayer is well, multiplayer with air quotes.
They could have just dropped a fishing rod for you to pick up.
Yeah.
I think it's pretty cool. I really like that aspect of the original multiplayer, especially being a younger person, being able to interact in the same. It's sort of like a single player game, but you both interact in the same space. It's kind of a really
Yeah, the
cool
world has
idea.
some continuity.
Yeah, and I don't think it'd really been explored before. So I think the fact that, yeah, it definitely sucks that you had to wait 5 days just to get the fishing rod when you're all excited to go and actually experience the game, and you see people in your house experiencing it right in front of you. Definitely,
Yeah,
definitely blows hard. But at the same time, it is kind of a neat little narrative or novelty rather, that the shop is the same shop for you and the other people in the same save.
exactly. For sure. And for sure, one of the most fun parts of the multiplayer was kind of logging on and kind of seeing the changes that the other people in your town had made while you were away. And that also adds to kind of drawing you back in every day to see what they're up to and how
Hmm.
things are progressing.
Yeah, and in terms of that, actually, the sort of just makes me think the, dump as well as the lost and found were another sort of alternative to that. Like, you'd come in each day and see, "Ooh, what can I take home from the dump?" Or or,
Good
Let's go
phrasing.
dumpster diving today.
yeah, it gives you options if you don't have enough money to walk into Nook store. Um, but it was something that would change every day. I think not necessarily the dump. I think the dump changed twice a week. I want to say where it would get cleared out, and then between the clearings, it would restock with just random items. And with the Lost and Found, I think that one was every day would get, refreshed of what was inside, which, funnily enough, it doesn't, promote honesty. You just walk into the Lost and Found and say, "Yep, that's mine," and just walk out with a giant vanity or something.
Yeah, well,
Yahoo!
I've already told you this, Evan, but the Lost and Found always confused me as a kid, from like a theming and tonal perspective. Because
Yeah.
you go in there, it's run by the cops, and they tell you they've got all this missing stuff, and it's if it's not yours, don't take it. So I was like, oh well, all right, I guess I'll leave then. That
Oh,
ain't
you
mine.
played it too honestly, Barry.
They gotta have
Yeah.
a karma system like Fallout 3. You start taking too much stuff, the villagers come after you.
Well, you probably would snitch on your older brothers if you saw them take anything out of there, wouldn't you?
Oh shit.
Walk up the copper.
Oh.
Then who's the informant?
Well, it'd be funny. It would actually be funny now that you mention it, if that was like an interaction that you could do, but
That's true, yeah. I mean, if they added that to one of the more recent installments, that would have been a funny thing to do. You're a narc, but it would be funny.
yeah. Ways, yeah, having more ways that you could like intervene with the other players on the memory card would is always good, I think.
But I don't think we could really fault Nintendo for what they were able to do at the time. I mean, this was essentially a N64 game that had been ported over and given some improvements, but
Yeah,
it was still from the early 2000s. There wasn't ample amounts of processing power,
No, definitely not.
as it were, to allow all these
I
interactions.
think it literally came out like a couple months before the GameCube's launch. Kind of
Yeah,
odd
yeah.
choice there.
yeah. So it came out at the very end of the N64's life cycle.
Do we know? what the differences were between the N64 and the GameCube releases?
Yeah, there's actually a handful of like kind of big ones. The biggest one to me is that the original didn't feature the museum or the Able Sisters tailor shop.
Yeah,
Hmm.
I mean, out of the what, 5 structures in the town that were interactive, that's a fairly big chunk of them that aren't
You know,
there.
it came down to memory constraints. Like even though I think the original Animal Crossing came out for the N64 CD drive, I think there's still only so much there we'll actually put on those discs back then.
Yeah, well, it was planned for the DD drive, but I think that was eventually scrapped. So it was just an N64
Oh,
cartridge
really?
at the
Well,
end.
yeah, even worse then.
Yeah,
It was nice that they actually gave you a memory stick with new copies of Animal
In
Crossing.
the GameCube version, yeah, that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
good. It guaranteed that anyone getting it would be able to, have a town. Because if I remember right, the file itself is actually fairly massive, larger than most GameCube files at the
Oh
time.
god, yeah, it almost takes up the entire card.
Yeah, it's I
Yeah.
think it's like 52 or something like that.
Oof.
It's when most memory cards are about that or larger slightly.
Back in the day.
It's tough times back then.
Yeah. Tough but simple.
so I want to talk about, I guess, kind of the starting experience. I think the game does. I mean, like Cam said, there's not a lot of gameplay to it, but it does do a good job of introducing you to like the very basics of it. Like when you're working for Nook, you have to run around, talk to people. You run little errands where you got to like write letters and look for items and try to make money. So they do a good job of making sure you know what you're supposed to be doing because it's not like abundantly clear what the objective of this game is when you start, and it kind of never becomes clearer. At one point, you'll probably just it'll dawn on you like, oh, this is it. I just farm or fish and catch my bugs and make money and
The
upgrade
daily
my
grind.
house. But but that's fine. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. It's just
Yeah, I actually wanted to talk about that slightly in terms of how it relates to other games or similar genres. And then two that come to mind for me are Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon,
yeah,
which are
those are the
both
big ones.
yeah, they're sort of relaxing uh, daily life, almost sim games.
But what about The Sims?
I feel like
We,
that's a
we
little different.
yeah, but yeah, with those, and I've played both of those in quite a large amount. But with both of those, Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley, they all have hard goals, if, for lack of a better term. There's always a drive to do something. For example, in Stardew Valley, it's fill out the community center and to also just keep making more and more money exponentially, which in itself is a goal in a sense. And that's what drives you to keep playing. And then in Harvest Moon, different games have different goals, but there was one on the Wii, which the title escapes me at this point. I want to say Animal Parade, but that one it's the same idea. It's daily relaxing, come in, but that one time isn't. Or actually neither of them time were real time. They progress as you do in the game, but Harvest Moon's goals were, a bit more overarching. They had a kind of these orbs you had to get, and you have to sort of get different achievements or accomplishments just to access them and unlock it. But point being is that Animal Crossing never really has those. The goals are simply just come in and play, like enjoy it, and just sort of wander around the village, do some errands. Even Nookington, it's like increasing the house. You never actually have to do that. There's nothing that says you have to, and you don't really miss out on anything if you don't.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that the game does have a few kind of objectives, and increasing the house is kind of the only one that they actually tell you about. But yeah, they Nook says something to the effect of "take your time paying it off," or "there's no rush." So that's the only
Yeah.
objective they say outright. Like, here's what you could be doing. I think at least the first payment to make your house, most players will probably do that, just because it kind of feels like that's what you need to do. But the other things that most people will probably end up doing is filling out the museum is a big one, and
Yep.
trying to decorate their house and make it real nice and win those happy home points.
Both of those actually, the HRA and the museum, it's never a necessary goal. It's
For sure.
compared to the hard goals of Stardew Valley and Harvest Moon, I'd say it's more of a soft goal where it's something you could do. It's available to do, and if you want to, you can. But there's nothing that says you need to. There's nothing locked behind completing it, or there's no rewards for say increasing the museum collection. It's you do it because you want to.
That also ties into Animal Crossing not really having much of a story. I mean, Stardew Valley, for instance, like you don't have to do the community center stuff, but in order to like progress certain points of the story and just get farther in the game, you do have to do some of them. But I think you could have added some of those things, like if you were to do a seasonal type thing like they do in Stardew Valley and add that to Animal Crossing, it would kind of add like a nice little overarching thing. We're in Stardew Valley, the days are not as you live them in real time. They're, I don't know, a much more condensed time, and you can play through multiple days in one sitting. And there's almost a sense of haste and urgency that's like, oh man, I don't have this gold star
Yeah,
pumpkin, I'm not
you
going to
got
get
to
all my
maximize
objectives.
your time.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe it doesn't have to be such a time constraint, but it still would be nice for there to be like an overarching objective, maybe per season or per month or something, just so that you could have a mix between just showing up and doing some daily maintenance versus showing up and actually doing a little bit of intended gameplay and almost like a quest sort of scenario.
Yeah, they could, but I feel like they run the risk of kind of going against their what to me seems to be the core philosophy of this game, which is not that you have to do anything really, that you don't want to.
Mhm.
Like you can just pick out weeds all day.
Yeah, if you want. You can just dig holes. You can design a t-shirt. Like,
Well, I'm not saying lock anything behind it. I'm just saying give me something more to do.
And I think they have in recent times, at least. I mean, I know in the Wii and City Folk, most of the city doesn't unlock until sort of throughout
Yeah,
your
that's true.
playtime. So they've changed that in recent installments. I'm not sure how it's going to be in New Horizons. I'm not sure if they have anything locked behind. I think people have the sense that the terraforming stuff is going to be locked behind something.
Well, I imagine that would be because that seems like a pretty drastic tool for changing the world
Yeah, and you don't
itself.
want the first Dumby to walk into their town and annihilate the whole.
Yeah, just Ragnarok the planet or the
Yeah.
island rather.
Later, loser.
Point being is that since technological advancements, they've improved in that regard.
Still, but I'd rather something be locked behind a hey, you have to do this first, other than hey, come back later. Right? Like I don't want to play Shenmue, right? I don't want to be told back to come back tomorrow in the afternoon and then have to wait around all day just to do it.
But then that's the problem is that this is the gameplay that they wanted. This is who the type of people they would want to play this are the people that are into that or have a craving for that style of
Sure.
game.
Well, maybe come back tomorrow was an underestimating. It's more like come back in 6 to 7 months and then we'll have something for you to do.
Right. So at the same time, as much as we want to like it because we like the idea or the possibilities, it's hard to sort of argue whether we deserve to have that, whether that's something they should have done to make it more appealing to us, or if it's just not necessarily something we enjoy as much as we think
Well, I don't
so.
think it's something they should have done. And don't get me wrong, I really like the way the game works. I really like the way the game plays. It's just I'm just venting my frustrations with how
With a 20-year-old
I
game.
can't have my cake and eat it too with this lovely system.
Yeah,
we're really just frustrated with the concept of linear time right now.
pretty much. So Nintendo, if you're listening, please fix that.
No, they're actively against time travel. You've heard it here first.
Well, I think it's worth mentioning that this game in particular, by comparison to every other game that's come after it in the series, does not have nearly as much content,
Absolutely.
like things to do. I can speak from like I've played New Leaf. There's so much to do. There's an incredible amount of like mini objectives that they've added in there. So it really just might be an issue of this one, it was the first one,
Of
they
age.
made.
It's an
So
issue of
yeah,
age. Yeah.
yeah.
Like I'm pretty sure like you can. I think the first one, it was the only one that you're able to play old NES games in game.
Yeah, they figured out they could make money off that later.
Yeah.
It's funny actually. It's apparently there was a blank NES cartridge in that game, and if you had it, it wouldn't do anything. If you tried to interact, it says, "Oh, sorry, there's nothing, no cartridge to play on this." Turns out apparently that Nintendo had planned to continue to release ROMs that you could download onto your memory card
Oh, really?
through their website, and then you could get a code, the same ones that you could use to, you know, make Tom Nook give you 30,000 bells or just exploit the game like crazy. They would give you a code, and it would then be put on your memory. And so then, if you used that blank NES cart, it would give you an option to choose out of any of the ROMs you had on that memory card. And I think two of the ones that were meant to be included in that but never were The Legend of Zelda, the first installment, and Super Mario Bros.
I think those ones are actually in the game. They're just not accessible.
Yeah, I think that's true. They are in the game files already, but can't be accessed normally.
You have to get in there with the old Game Shock.
I think those two actually are unaccessible. I think there's a couple that are accessible. I think Ice Climbers was one, and there might have been, I can't remember the second, but those ones were accessible because there were cards that were given out that would let you unlock those ones, but it didn't continue long enough to get to the Mario
Oh,
and
right.
Zelda.
I have a question. Could you save your progress on those NES games in Animal Crossing?
As much as I ever played it,
Ooh,
I honestly don't know.
I don't think
I
you
feel like you
could.
couldn't.
I don't think you
I
could.
don't think so.
I don't think there was any type of save state. It was sort of you opened it up and
Yeah, I don't think there were full games either. I know like certain games like Excite Bike and stuff like that just kind of throw you into it. Like they have a menu that just says press start and then you just kind of go.
I mean that might have just
The
been a
games
NES
that
game.
they included in Animal Crossing are all these kind of high score type games. I'm not sure if there's a better word for it, but there's no story or necessarily. It's just kind of play and get as many points as you
Arcade
can.
games.
Yeah, that's the word, arcade. So I'm not sure if The Legend of Zelda or Super Mario would have been good ones to include here for that reason.
Yeah, I mean, maybe by the point they would have introduced them, they would have had some means to have that work. If they included save states or not, I don't know.
I mean, it's still a nifty inclusion to have these NES
Definitely
games
for
in
the
there.
time. Yeah.
Weren't games back then where you're able to like input a code and like it would drop you into a specific level?
Oh, those are the worst.
Some of them.
Well, not or the ones where there were no saves, it was just level codes.
Oh yeah.
Yeah,
And
like
some of
the
them
old
made them
Metroid.
so obnoxiously long.
Oh god.
Yeah. So I want to talk about how this game is, I would say, intended for a multiplayer experience. There's a lot of features in there that are intended to have at least two human villagers to kind of interact with. The biggest one that really sticks out to me is the Able Sisters, which kind of doesn't do anything if you're just playing it by yourself. I guess the intention there is that people go in and put their designs and you can kind of swap them back and forth. But if you're just playing by yourself, uh, every time you walk in there, they just have the same shirts and nothing changes. And like you can store items and sell them through your gyroid, but that's pointless without someone else. This is actually a really good feature, but it doesn't work great with just the single player. Is how animals will show other human players the letters you've written, which I think leads to a lot of pretty funny situations. At least it did when I was a kid, and see the stupid things you've been writing. But it's just kind of unfortunate, I guess, because not everyone probably had people to play with.
Yeah, I mean, it definitely speaks to Nintendo's, core, one of their core philosophies, I think, which is just, you know, multiplayer is getting more than one person playing this communally, and that increasing the fun you can have with things. And I think, less than party games necessarily, Animal Crossing does have it, but at the same time, I mean, I think you still get quite a bit out of the game, but you're right, you definitely miss out on a couple unique interactions and being able to enjoy parts of the game that you wouldn't be able to
Well, I
otherwise.
think the easiest way to design parts of the experience is to just not design part of the experience and let part of the experience kind of evolve and come out of a multiplayer experience where you have more than one person, right? And they kind of play the game in their own sort of way instead of having to direct one person through it and keep the attention of the one person constantly. You kind of say, okay, so now we're going to let another human variable loose in this game, and then the two variables can sort of interact with each other in their own different way, and then we can focus on tailoring other parts of the game.
Yeah, I mean, one anecdote I'll say is that, me and my younger sister, we used to both play quite a bit, and eventually, when we had the larger house improvements, we would set up little personal shops on different floors of our house so that, we would buy up or buy something from Nooks or something we found and we could display it there. And then, while the other one was playing, whenever they do, they could always come in, look. If they saw something they wanted, they could, send a letter with some money and then the other person would send the item back. But, it's something that we were able to manage to do ourselves just because we had the interest in doing it. But giving the option to directly do that instead of having to make this makeshift mail order thing happen, that would have been a neat way to utilize the idea that more than one person in a family might be playing this, allow them to sell items to the other player.
Yeah, and I think what this game in particular does really well is these kind of emergent gameplay loops that they can't really have programmed in there, or they didn't at least. But just through your own creativity and will to make these different interactions happen, this game definitely allows you to in all these kind of special ways, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think can't wait for a Nintendo to add like split screen to this so we could play at the same time.
Well, and I'm gonna say that's probably one of the biggest missed opportunities for this entire series is I know New Horizons finally has local multiplayer, but
Cough, cough.
up until like up until now, it's something I've really been missing, really been wanting from the series.
I remember when I was younger with a fellow classmate, I'd like convinced him to get Animal Crossing, and eventually, like after a few weeks, like after he got into the game, we kind of like swapped, or we took turns giving each other or each of our memory cards, and we just visited each village.
I mean, that's dangerous.
Oh
That's how
yeah,
you
no,
lose the
I
favorite
didn't know at
village.
the time, but it was cool because like going into visiting their world and seeing how much they had progressed through the game. I thought that was, and like from then I was like, man, it'd be so cool if there was like a, I guess an MMO sense of Animal Crossing until you come back to your own village and you get a bunch of weeds and your favorite villagers leave you.
Yeah, so definitely that village visiting mechanic was really like a really interesting use of the hardware. It was kind of not something any other games on the GameCube, as far as I know, kind of made use of this dual memory card slot to kind of let you do
Yeah, I
that
mean, there
travel
was
through like
no
another
online
file.
multiplayer or anything.
Yeah,
This was the workaround.
yeah, yeah. It seemed like a really clever thing to do, and it's a nice inclusion. But I know at least when I was playing as a kid, I didn't know anyone else who had the game, so.
Yeah, neither did. I wish I knew you and Cam had it.
Yeah, I think one of my buddies back then had it, and he's the one that introduced me to it. But eventually, I took my memory card over, and he's like, "Oh, like pop it in, like we'll visit." And I lost the one character that was like my best
No,
friend in the game, and then I never connected it to another town again. That was it for the next
that
20
was
years.
it. Done.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there's a lot of customization in this game that they allow. Again, this is kind of about the emergent kind of gameplay is like, obviously you can change your clothes, you can change what your villagers say, their catchphrases, which is one of my favorite features. You can change the layout of your town, change the trees. Uh, it gives you all these opportunities to really like shape it the way you want it to be. Which I think is nice. The other thing is about this game is that there is so many little things to it. Like I'm not sure how many villagers there are, how many different ones, but every single time that I've played this game exactly, I've and started a new town, which has been a handful of times over the last 20 years. you always get a different contingent of villagers, and it's interesting that they would make so many, knowing that most players would only get to see maybe 20 of them maximum.
Yeah, I want to say there's like 90 of them, but yeah, there's like not just villages. I think just unique characters in total in the first GC one, but there's just a ton of them.
Yeah.
What's interesting is that recently I found out that it generates the villagers with up to 3 different personalities.
It's 4. It's
It's 4?
yeah, 4 male personalities and 4 female personalities.
No.
Yeah, it does lose a bit of the magic once you kind of realize your villagers are saying the same lines to you, but
You don't know it at the time.
yeah, considering how much dialogue is already in this game, I think it was a pretty good amount to have like 8 different sets that your villagers could say to you. And it's not a small amount. You can really talk to them a lot and not see the same dialogue repeated.
Though, did you know that if if you keep on talking to one villager over and over and over again, they'll actually get mad at you?
I remember
In
that.
the same way that if you hit them with a net or if you push them around, if you keep talking to them, they'll tell you to go away.
Damn.
Leave me.
I didn't know that.
So I think that's actually there's a lot of life to these, you know, old polygonal characters.
Yeah, these old computer programs.
Hmm.
I remember like occasionally you sometimes get like a random special villager come down. Like the fashion designer with the car.
That's
Gracie.
Gracie, yeah. I remember first like interacting, I was like, oh my god, this is different. This is cool. It's like, oh, I gotta wash the car. Okay, great.
It was also really hard to clean that car, I remember.
yeah.
Oh no, yeah.
Got more than a few blisters off that one. The one unique villager I never got the handle of, and maybe I was the only one because it sounds like a lot of people did know how to deal with this, was the turnips.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, that
Sorry,
turnip
John.
guy.
Yeah, turnip woman. Okay.
Oh, my bad. It's been a while.
But you know, the joke is that turnips are supposed to act like stocks, like real world stocks, and that you
Mhm.
buy low and sell high. But you tell that to grade 3 me, and I have no idea what I'm doing. Tried to buy them once, they all rotted, and that was about it.
Yeah, I had a pretty similar experience at like let's say the age of 10 years old. Like I talked to Joan the first time and she starts spouting all these big brain economic concepts, and I don't remember interacting with her much after that. But this game does it has a lot of underlying systems that it doesn't tell you about ever. The turnips is a big one. Like a player back in 2002 probably, well, I guess they probably had the internet at the time, but like you wouldn't know how the stock market actually works, like the actual numbers, the underlying.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's meant for you to be constantly checking, just, you know, you're not supposed to know how it's gonna get. You're not supposed to know if it's gonna get higher or lower. It's just,
Right.
do you
It's
risk
supposed
holding
to
it
simulate
or
kind of the
yeah.
real life
But
thing.
one thing that Animal Crossing does do very well in that vein is it doesn't dump a crap ton of information on you all at once. It kind of allows you to explore, and that some things become more and more obvious as you play. Like especially some of the JRPG games, it feels like you're constantly for the first like hours of the game flipping through menus. You just can't even retain it all.
That's true. They do give you just enough to let you figure it out yourself, for the most part. My biggest issue with the information that it withholds kind of pertains to the fish and the bugs, and like when they go in and out of season.
Mm,
Because without a guide, there's no way to know.
yep.
I
Some of
mean, I think
them,
with that one, it was sort of meant to be natural. You're supposed to just start to recognize, okay, these fish started showing up in spring, or you know, these ones stopped showing up in the winter. And I don't remember the you know, the timings on that anymore, but I definitely know that by the time I had played years of that game originally, it was I knew that in the winter I could catch more of this fish or the other fish.
yeah, certain ones were obvious, but not all of them. Some of them were very particular. The jellyfish springs to mind, which can only be caught
Mhm.
in September. And I mean, let's say you took a break from playing the game for September, and then you came back in November, and
But it also adds to the uniqueness and rarity, right? Where, you're not trying if you're just, trying to min max the museum and catch every single thing and figure out when it is and all that, then
Yeah, but then I gotta wait a whole
instead of
year
happening.
for a goddamn fish.
Well,
One
here's
fish.
here's here's my suggestion. Here's my suggestion, because right now the way it is, I'm gonna say that really the only way that a player could catch all the fish and bugs realistically is if they looked it up online, which
Probably,
I
yeah.
don't like
True.
that. Now, I'm not saying that they should tell you exactly when and where, but I think it would be interesting if there was maybe a signboard or an NPC somewhere that updates every so often with hints about where and what.
Wasn't there a fishing NPC at one point?
Yeah, he runs the
So there's the
tournaments.
fishing tournament, yeah.
That's right.
No, so there is one good hint or in the game about a fish, which is about the coelacanth. Sometimes the villagers would talk to you about an ancient fish that only comes out
I
in the
remember that
rain, I
guy.
think.
Jeez, I remember catching that thing for the first time. I was like petrified I was gonna let it go.
So I think it's good when they give you these hints when they if there's
Yeah,
some
like
way
in
in the
in
game.
world,
Yeah,
uh, like hints. Yeah,
that's like a big thing for
If
me.
Chip could just like, drop a hint, like maybe every fishing tournament or something, or just every
well,
week
maybe
just show
Chip
up.
just isn't into you like that, Cam.
Well, you know what? Fine, Chip. I see how it is.
Now, I think maybe there's something to say as well about how this game would maybe encourage crowdsourcing that kind of knowledge.
Yeah,
Like
the
maybe you talk to your
schoolyard.
friends at school. Yeah, exactly. Which is an interesting way to run it. I can't say that it's all bad.
But we're mostly just going to crowdsource from GameFAQs, let's be honest.
Well, exactly.
Yeah, that's true.
Let's be honest. That's how it's gonna go.
I can't remember if I printed this or my friend printed this, but I remember. I'm pretty sure I got Animal Crossing a bit later after its release when I got a GameCube. But I remember printing out like all of the cheat codes for the game,
Oh yeah, I did that too with my sister.
and it was just like I think it took up like at least 99 pages of paper.
It was quite the pile. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. I remember like going through each code, or I think each code, and like seeing what item I would get.
Also, you can't trust shitty kids. I mean, I remember going through school and kids telling me that Sonic was unlockable in Smash Bros. Melee, right? But you can't trust the word.
Yeah,
true.
there's definitely some pretty good rumors that come about due to schoolyard
Mhm.
I'm gonna say
information.
I'm gonna say this is more a flaw with the schoolyard than it is with Animal Crossing. So I'll give
I
Animal
mean,
Crossing a pass
Well, I
on
mean, if
that
Animal
one.
Crossing is trying to crowdsource from the schoolyard,
That's true.
I
Find
mean,
your
it
muse
leads to
under the truck.
some good urban legends. I know there was one where it was like this villager would show up, and I don't remember the name. It was some bear, but it would like essentially crash your game. And if you like went into his house, it would just freeze everything. And like it was some ridiculous, like
yeah.
scary story, right? But you didn't know if it was true or not back then.
Well, I think well, it's cool things for the community, but still want to know when I can catch a fish.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So again, I don't want them to just come out and be like, "Hey, here's where the fish and the bugs are," but just if there was some way to kind of get some hints, I think that would be fun. Anyway, I want to talk about how tedious this game can be for a second.
The grind.
The menu
Whew.
is so tedious in this game to the point of being like painful at this point in my life. Like you can only donate one item at a time to the museum. You can only put one letter through at a time to the post office, which there I don't know what's function that serves. With the museum, I can kind of give a pass on it because I know Blathers' his whole thing is to blather on about the things you're giving him. But like when you pick up money, it doesn't automatically go in your wallet, so now you got to go into your items, put it in your wallet. If you want to swap between tools, that takes forever, and it's just
Yeah, when I mentioned earlier that there's not a whole lot of like difficulty to the game, the menu system is probably the hardest part of the game. Just plain,
The real end game.
like seriously, and that's something that could be totally alleviated with some pretty easy fixes, which obviously they went and did. But also just having to scroll across your inventory. I mean, I know it's not ever going to be released on on PC, right? But that could be really easily alleviated by like a Minecraft system, right, where you just have a mouse and you can go click through your inventory.
Yeah, I mean in the Wii U one, or sorry, yeah, the Wii U one. in Amiibo Festival, they fixed that. In in City Folk, I mean, you're able to use the Wiimote to, the IR sensor to just basically use it as a cursor,
Yeah, but then you got to
which
use the Wiimote.
it's a good
So
remote one
that's
for certain
something
things.
that I just didn't age well at all.
Yeah.
Big flop. Something else that really
Definitely.
bothers me is how much space your tools take up in the inventory compared to how big your inventory is.
Hmm.
I don't think it would be a big stretch to just make it so your tools don't take up any space. Like I don't, and this is something that's carried through all the games. I don't know why they don't just let you carry all your tools. Come on, help us out here.
Yeah, I don't know if it's like a just this attachment to the idea of items where every item is individual and has its own spot, where you need to feel like everything takes up space. I mean, it's, at this point with newer releases, it's aged mechanic definitely. But back then, I mean, it made sense for the time, I think, especially if it were taking the majority of the gameplay from the N64 version of the game.
Yeah. All right. Well, maybe we can start talking about the story, if you will. Uh,
Or lack thereof.
what do you have to say about that, Evan?
Well, and doesn't really have a story, so to say, at least in a traditional sense. And the way that the game sort of has a narrative is through the way I see it is growth. That's the narrative drive to this game is, you grow your house, you grow Nookingtons, you grow the museum collection, you grow the village with more villagers showing up, and that's kind of the story of the game is or at least the in the absence of a story, that's what the narrative of the game is, I think, is that it's about growing. That's what's driving you. That's what you're looking for, and that's what's evolving throughout the whole game. Even relationships with other villagers, they grow as you talk to them, or send them letters, or bribe them with gifts and jobs.
Yeah.
That's in my eyes the story of Animal Crossing.
Yeah, and it's really kind of like an emergent story. Like it's not, there's no plot. There isn't like
Yeah.
beginning, middle, end. But I definitely appreciate how, like you said, everything grows, and that's kind of how you see things take shape.
Though I will say that they do add little touches to the world that sort of build your own story a bit.
The
For
open endedness, yeah.
oh no, two examples are the HRA, which is this, uh, group.
Faceless.
Yeah, this is a faceless evil organization that tells you you don't know how to decorate. Um,
Every single day.
yeah, but it's this real, in universe, this real world group that's in contact with you, and then that sort of builds the world out a bit. And the second, which I think is actually one of the nicest little touches to the game, are the letters from mom, where it's like, your character is a character, and this person is moved, and their mom is sending you letters and little gifts and cake on your birthday type of thing. It's a nice little way to build up the world and give it a bit of a story.
Yeah, I mean, you could say that the base story that every player will experience is that you're some new kid in town and you don't have a place to stay, and the local raccoon hooks you up, free house, and then he just lets you pay it off. Like that's, if you
The
want to say.
millennial dream.
Yeah,
No
I'm still
interest.
looking for
Oh.
my local raccoon to hook me up. Um, but what's interesting is how no two players will really have the same exact experience with this game. Just owing to like the huge cast of villagers that can potentially show up and the different ways that you can interact with the game.
And what time of the year you play it.
Well,
Yep.
exactly, yeah. So let's talk about the townsfolk, the villagers, the meat, if you will, of the characters. I guess they're kind of dickheads in this game.
Absolutely. You want to talk about the
They're
story?
kind of really mean.
It's definitely a struggle trying to survive after being homeless in this new town. All your neighbors are assholes, and then this raccoon constantly trying to bust up your kneecaps. It's a struggle for real. Like honestly, and this is kind of touching back to my difficulty thing. One of the other biggest difficulty things in the game is trying to have your villagers not scare off fish and bugs.
Oh, that's kind of real lifey, isn't it? If you're fishing, I just ran up to you and started yelling, you'd be a bit screwed too, wouldn't you?
Probably be in the lake pretty soon.
But I think that's something they've changed in recent entries as well, is the attitude of villagers. I think they have significantly cut down on sort of negative attitudes.
They've gotten nicer for sure.
Yeah, I think they got sort of scared of people feeling like they weren't having a good time talking to the crow 2 doors down who wants them to piss off so he can have a nap or something. But
Yeah, but I actually I liked it. I mean, I think they may be a little overdone the rudeness in this one, but it is nice for them to have a little edge, so they're
well, I
not
think
just
it's
like
funny. Yeah,
yeah, it adds some humor, it adds some
Until
character.
they force you to trade an item, or they randomly out of the blue just change the color of your roof because they felt
Yeah.
like
Yeah,
it.
definitely sucks.
It's like, oh no.
Or they
I
ask
didn't
you to
wanna
bring
do
them a
that.
ball and they're on the upper level and the ball's on the lower.
yeah.
Oh god.
Well, you can always send them a strongly worded letter after.
Yep.
It's true.
I mean, they won't get it, but I mean, it still makes me feel better.
Well, your brother might if it shows it to your sibling.
I got
Yeah.
this letter.
Speaking of the letter writing, for a game where that's kind of a big feature, I guess, or like something that they encourage you to do a lot, I it bothers me so much that when you're writing words and you're halfway through a word and it goes down to the next line, that it doesn't keep the word as one,
Mm.
and like that's how you're supposed to
Typographers and
type.
screaming.
It's just it's awful. I can't. What have they done?
I mean, maybe that was a localization issue where the
Yeah,
you know,
that's true.
the programming wasn't changed in a way to allow English words to stay connected.
Yeah, that's most likely the case. It's frustrating.
Yeah. I mean, I think even more frustrating with the letters is the fact that they a lot of the time don't feel like they actually do anything, where it's you can send it to a villager
I'm
if you
pretty
feel
sure
like it, but
there is no purpose to letters. You can literally just type like an exclamation mark, and it's like, oh, okay, that's good enough.
If they don't understand it, like that's how you know the computer program isn't advanced enough, is if they tell you that they didn't understand your letter.
yeah.
It needs to read thank for bug or furniture.
Speaking of the localization, I think this is one of the best localized games for or for Western audiences because it really doesn't seem like it was translated from Japanese. It's written very well.
I think Resetti on his own puts it up there
Huh.
for me.
Yeah, his dialogue is great. You can tell it's someone who really knows
I mean,
like
it flows
Western culture.
naturally. Yeah.
Yeah. And they have personalities. They use slang. They use
Yeah.
words that, the average Japanese interpreter probably wouldn't. And for that, it's great. Because it helps us connect with it. If you're playing a game, like I'm gonna bring up Final Fantasy VII, which I know you guys haven't played, but awful localization, garbage. Like the point where sometimes the sentences just aren't even getting through. Like, so it does a lot for the Western audience, I think, to have the dialogue be so robust and
Mhm.
so local.
Oh, it probably also helps that they weren't necessarily trying to tell a narrative, right? Whereas it's hard to translate a narrative where you're really trying to. It's more like a script, right? Where, as in Animal
You're trying
Crossing,
to
it's
get
just
specific ideas off
yeah.
there.
Whereas in Animal Crossing, it's just dialogue. You're just having a conversation, so it's a lot easier to just rewrite that from the ground up.
That's true. You don't have to necessarily translate. You can create your own.
And I mean, they probably still did take some notes from the original
Oh,
characters they
absolutely.
had
Yeah.
written, but I mean, they really had a lot of license to just go and do whatever. I mean, how would anybody know the difference?
Yeah. So we talked earlier about how there's like 8 personalities, I guess, total for the villagers. But I guess one of the clever things they do to almost disguise this or to help them feel different from one another is with the catchphrases. Because
Yeah.
as far as I know, each villager has their own unique catchphrase, which really adds to their character, even though it's such a small thing. But you'll never see them repeat the same thing unless you make them say it. But it's a nice feature. So this game also has a like super memorable main cast. Like you've got Tom Nook, you got Tortimer, Blathers, all the the Pelicans at the mail office, got Copper, Booker, Gulliver, like very iconic characters that you know what they look like. They spring to mind. You know their personalities. Um, it's a good cast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, it's, definitely they're very much characters in and of themselves. They're very unique. They don't copy sort of other stuff. They're unlike regular villagers, it allows them to have a distinguished personality because they aren't necessarily as robust as some of the other villagers.
Yeah, well, you know that every player will have the same experience with these ones, so
Hmm.
you can kind of
I
rate
guess it
them
also
more
helps that they're
specifically.
all like different animal types, I guess.
Yeah, well, like there isn't another turtle villager, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really good point, actually.
I think one character we haven't actually really mentioned yet is a KK Slider.
Oh
Love
yeah,
that guy.
I mean, definitely a highlight of the game, I think. It's something that made you come in every, what was it, Friday or Saturday?
I think it's every Saturday. And I remember
Saturday,
the
yeah.
first time I interacted with him at night, I thought I beaten the game because it does the credits.
Oh, yeah.
I was like, oh my god, I beat the game. Oh, saw my mom and dad like, oh, guys, look, I beat the game. It's like, oh no, it keeps going. Oh, okay.
I mean, you mentioned that. It's actually a very unique way of them getting the credits in the game. With no end game, where do you put it? Well, you're going to be listening to the song for 2 minutes here. Let's throw it in there and give it a little, ambient music video looking thing. So, yeah, I think he's one of the best inclusions of the game. And, just being able to know that he's coming and expect him and go there, ask for a song, not get the one you want because he didn't spell it right or
yeah,
yeah, something like that. But even just the variety of songs you can get, there's like at least 50, I think.
yeah. I think there's 50.
Yeah, somewhere around there. But it's and the fact that all of these are whole songs created for this game.
Yeah, the original score. Well, we'll get into that, but definitely.
Just in like different genres of music.
Hmm. And am I wrong? I think the name and the character himself was modeled after one of the music producers for Nintendo?
It's
Yes.
some sort of portmanteau of the guy's name, which I can't tell you, but it's related to him somehow. And obviously he did all the music, so it makes
Yeah.
sense. And nothing really shows the intended demographic for this game other than having like this big feature that's only on Saturday night. If this game was marketed towards us, it would be at like 8 o'clock on a Tuesday.
Sure enough.
Marketed towards adults, I should say.
Yeah, funny you mentioned that. I think one of the features that I never knew existed up until later in my life was the ghost that you could find at about 2 a.m.
Yeah.
That's past bedtime. I don't know
Who's up
which
that?
kid. I don't know which kid was wandering around at 2 a.m. and came across this ghost for the first time, but
Yo, no
definitely
lie.
wasn't me.
I remember being up at like maybe 5 or 6 to play Animal Crossing on a weekend.
Well, I can tell you, I happened across Wisp, I think is his name, without knowing about him when I was sleeping over at a friend's house. So doing an all-nighter. So that's, I guess, the intended interaction. I don't know.
Maybe.
I think some of the villagers hint towards his existence. I think I heard some of them mentioning a ghost that appears late at
Hmm.
night. So
So basically, you're supposed to ignore your parents and stay up late just to see this. Hopefully, they don't hear the TV going.
I'm not sure what the intended interaction is there, but it is a nice little find
Well, I think we could probably talk about the music too, just
for sure.
going off KK Slider. And I think it's probably one of the. It's a soundtrack that still stands up to this day. I think.
Oh, definitely. It's very like laid back, like very like keeps you like at ease, I guess.
I mean,
I
when
would
you go
say.
on YouTube and you see 1 hour relaxing Animal Crossing music with rain,
10-hour
it did something right.
Yeah, well, it's very iconic, and it's not like I can't think of any other games that I would compare the sound to because it's very
Do, do,
unique.
do, 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 do,
And
I'd say maybe
do, do,
Stardew
do,
Valley.
do.
Stardew Valley would be a close comparison. Just the ambient music that changes with, the seasons. But I think Animal Crossing still has a bit more of a robust set of music.
Yeah, there's quite a lot of tracks, and they do a good job of theming all the different areas that you go to with the music. Like, you go to the
Mhm.
museum and it's very kind of quiet and it almost sounds kind of like a lullaby
You hear your
maybe.
footsteps.
Yeah, it sounds quiet.
Hmm.
It sounds
Yeah,
like a quiet place. And then, you go to Tom Nook's shop, it's very upbeat, and as soon as you walk in, he's talking to you, and yeah, they do a good job of giving you the tone of where you are with the music.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, even the time of day, it's different when it's, the tone, like you say, it gives a different sort of ambience when it's, 8 o'clock in the evening and the sun's going down or it's gone down depending on the season than it does at 12 p.m.
I think during like what winter it plays more of like a Christmassy jingle of the tune.
You could be right. I don't actually know. I can tell you that there is 24 music tracks for the ambient world, one for each hour of the day, that are all different, which is pretty impressive. Especially again when most
Yeah,
players won't be seeing, you know, at least probably half of
a
those.
significant,
Yeah.
yeah. But it definitely adds to the not getting stale. It's if every time you play, you hear the same one song on repeat
Yeah,
for
absolutely.
the sunny hours of the day or one all night. Then I think it
That'd be
would
pretty
start getting
crushing.
a bit grating. Yeah.
Yeah, it actually is kind of a brilliant decision when you put it that way because it would get pretty grating, and you would almost even start to feel bored as a result of the music being the same.
Yeah, there's definitely been games I've played in the past where hearing the same song on repeat, if like say a Zelda game where I'm in a dungeon, I'm getting stuck for whatever reason. If I keep hearing that same song for 3 hours, hopefully, at that point I might have more of a problem than just the music, but just hearing the same thing over and over and over and over and over just doesn't make me want to play anymore. It
Yeah.
makes me want to just stop and take a break.
Or
Definitely.
just turn the sound off. Like the biggest offender that I can think of right off the top of my head is the Pokemon series. Whenever you get into a battle
Oh yeah.
and they play some
Okay.
noise
Oh
and you hear
god.
the battle theme start up again, it's like, oh God, please.
Yeah.
Then you finally get into a battle with like Team Rocket or whatever. It's like, something different. Thank God.
Although there in Pokemon, I guess it did make the times when you hear the gym leaders and the Elite Four music a lot more special, but it probably wasn't worth it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you, I feel like in those games you could play without the sound and it's not that big a deal. Playing like Animal Crossing without sound just wouldn't be the same experience.
It creates like an ambience, which definitely adds to the whole energy of the game.
Yeah.
Did anyone mess with the melody thing that's right by the post office?
I remember yelling at my friend as a kid because when I had gone upstairs to get a snack or something, he had changed the melody. I don't think I had ever been more angry up until then in my life. Because did I remember what it was? No.
No. I could have never figured it out like what the purpose for that was.
It plays at certain times, I think.
It plays in all
It's
kinds
like
of different
a sound
places.
bell.
The main place that you'll hear it is when you start up a conversation with any character, even the NPC, or sorry, the I guess mainstay cast, is they'll play that little jingle. But what's cool about it is that they all have a different sound,
Tone.
a different tone, yeah, or like
Yeah, it's like a different instrument, you
yeah.
could say. Yeah.
And then I think yeah, when the bell chimes, it plays, and I want to say there's at least one other. Oh, if you have any musical instruments in your house and you play them, they'll play your town tune.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So it's
Interesting.
kind of a quirky inclusion, but it definitely adds a lot of character.
Yeah, you could
Oh,
make
definitely.
it a bit more unique.
Yeah.
Especially when you put a bit of the Star Wars theme as the jingle.
Yeah, so I remember going on the internet as a kid and looking up all these different like cool tunes, like opening soundtracks for animes and that kind of stuff. It's a fun thing.
No wonder the villagers moved out.
Sith Lord's moving in. I gotta get the hell out of here.
Da, da.
I think another thing that sort of goes along with the music that I quite enjoyed, and I think I might be, maybe a bit more on my own on this one, was the gyroids. I
Oh yeah.
always enjoyed finding them, like just different unique ones and setting up like my favorites or just the ones that are like super interesting that you are just way different than other ones that you've seen before with like completely different sounds to them.
Or just all of them. Man, your house is a mess.
A noisy
I'm
mess.
pretty sure I made a entire like storage area with just gyroids.
Yeah, when I booted up my old town recently, you should have seen one of the floors. It was literally just like gyroids.
Yeah.
And I mean, some of them are pretty creepy too, to be like, honestly,
Oh,
the
yeah.
faces they put on them. But
Yeah, gyroids are strange, but I mean, they weren't my favorite as a kid. I didn't like the noises they made, but well, what I didn't like was how they would eat up a dig site every day when I'm trying to get my fossils. But
Yeah.
mm,
that's
Yeah.
not a big deal.
I'm disappointed that they've been basically removed from the series. I think they were a
What?
very interesting inclusion.
Yeah, I don't think
Wait,
they
they've
appear.
actually removed them?
Yeah, I don't think they appear in any games after this one. I could be wrong.
Oh my god.
Yeah,
They're definitely not a
that,
new
that
leaf.
was the only one.
I mean, it definitely goes to show how much Animal Crossing, besides the GameCube one that I played.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the next one, City Folk, had removed them.
Oh, well, it's funny that you say the next one because we haven't even mentioned Wild World, which was the one between the GameCube
We
version.
don't mention Wild World.
I can't tell you if that had gyroids. I don't recall.
I couldn't either, to be honest. I if I remember correctly, I think City Folk had a gyroid. It might have been an NPC character in one of the
Yeah, that's
locations.
Lloyd. He's kind of a mainstay character.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, the gyroids as an item were definitely removed.
Yeah, it is a shame because it was kind of one
That
of these
sucks.
quirky things that gave the game
Yeah,
that
it was
special
unique to
character.
Animal Crossing.
It was definitely Japanese AF.
Yeah. So we've been talking about the kind of presentation things a bunch, like the music and that sort of thing. Do you have any thoughts about that, Mark? I guess about the
I
graphics,
think
the linear
overall,
style.
yeah, like it's actually interesting enough. I recently found out that how the game renders the world is actually just one big cylinder.
I think that's in the later ones. I'm not sure if that's true in this one.
That's definitely going to be the later ones, I think, after they
Really?
changed the way you view the world from acres to a constantly scrolling one, which I think was changed in Wild World, actually.
Yeah, I think that's true.
Because I'm pretty sure, pretty sure like I would recently watch like a review of it of Animal Crossing GameCube, and they mentioned how like, oh yeah, if you were to like up your FOV and you can just see like the world's just one giant cylinder. It's like, oh, great.
Granted, I could be wrong. There's nothing that
That's true.
says it couldn't, but yeah.
But like overall, I think it's very, it is what like it's very like a cartoony, like it suits the tone of the game essentially, and like I felt like, I mean, I haven't played the later games, so like when I think about Animal Crossing, I'm always like immediately thinking about like the old school style of how it is. I never seen what the N64 version looked like. I don't know if there was any graphical improvement between
I
GameCube
think
and
maybe a
N64,
little.
I think there was
like a little
mild
bit.
Yeah,
improvement for
screenshots
sure.
I've seen of the N64 one look a little rough. But yeah, you're right. The graphics are definitely a big part of the game's character and the tone that it projects. If the graphics had been any more, if they had been like blander, or if there hadn't been,
Like it was very colorful, very poppy. Like
yeah,
it's as a kid growing up, like I felt like that was it is what it is. It was just fun, and it's funny because I remember like recently watching the New Horizons like trailer, and like comparing like the player character models versus the old school models.
They've definitely improved on that.
Oh yeah, they definitely proved it. At first, I was like, this seems weird to me because like again, I've only played the GameCube version, so it's like, oh,
I mean, was there any consensus on the original player characters of what they are?
they
Because
look like they're just
I
humanoids with
think they are
horns,
supposed to be humans, but
yeah.
just with horns?
just with horns.
I mean, I guess.
Because that is something they removed the next game, I think. Either the next game or by the City Folk at least.
Well, I have a theory that's not really substantiated, I guess, but my theory is that the male characters have horns and like a weird do-rag hat because they didn't want to deal with having the players have hair in that one.
Oh, okay.
And I guess it looked weird if it was just like a perfect circular head, so they kind of wanted to add something on there. That's my guess. as to why they did that.
That's smart.
Yeah, horns are still strange though.
It is weird.
I do like how like whenever you make a character, it always randomizes like your appearance. Like besides like
a
choosing.
hit or miss thing, I think.
Yeah, it's like, oh, like I remember when I downloaded the emulator and making my character, I'm like, oh, why do I look so like
Evil.
sleazy, like
Scary.
very lazy looking?
Unfortunate.
First impressions
Yeah,
are pretty
exactly.
important.
Yeah, I think that was kind of something they missed the mark on in this one a bit, is by not letting you edit how your player looks aside from clothing after the initial train ride, because some of
Yeah.
those
It's like, hey, are you a boy or a girl? Yes.
'cause some of those eyes that you get on your villagers are pretty terrifying.
Oh yeah, oh.
Scary.
They are.
They did not age well.
I guess like, yeah, it did not, and I guess it also goes in hand with the overall like randomized generator with the game. How like whenever you start a new town, it completely generates a new map, so you never get
Yeah, I
one
think there's
town
a
that's the
set
same.
number of them. It's not entirely randomly
Okay.
generated,
Oh, is
but
that right?
it's enough that there's enough that you would never get the
same
one
town.
twice, basically.
Interesting.
Because man, let me tell you, like the town that I got when I downloaded the emulator, I'm like, I have to cross a pond and like a little ravine in order to get to Tom Nook's place. I think that was just on like A8 or something or whatever. I'm like, great. I'm gonna have to go down to C in order to cross a bridge and then run back up.
Literally
Too bad you couldn't
unplayable.
build a little bridge yourself in that one.
Yeah, so there was an option somehow, I don't remember how, but there's a way to build bridges in this game. But I don't recall.
Wait, what?
Yeah, there's a way.
Yeah, I think after a certain point, I want to say the post office, though I might be thinking of a later game.
Do you donate money? Can you? I can't remember, but are we able to donate money to Mortimer?
Tortimer, my guy.
Turner, sorry.
He's
Mortimer.
a
what the fuck?
turtle, Mark.
I'm sorry. Sorry.
No, I don't think so.
Okay. Yeah, because I remember like playing this game 20 years ago. I remember distinctly how like, oh, just one day there's now a new bridge connecting. Like, oh, this makes life so much easier to get from A to B. Thanks, game.
Yeah, the RNG on the map was kind of a big part of it. Like you could honestly
yes.
get some pretty bad spawns. Like Mark's, where you're far away from Nook, that is actually the worst possible map layout.
Oh my god, it was.
And it's
It's
little things like
awful.
that they're definitely that I'm really excited for them addressing in the new Animal Crossing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But yeah, definitely restarted a couple towns just to get a nicer spot.
A nice map, a nice character, golden.
Hmm.
I think another thing, actually, speaking of the maps, that I always thought was interesting was how the ground would wear out where you would run.
Now, is that a feature in this one?
I think it was.
And I know it was added later on. I'm not sure if it's true in this one though. I know they all blur together because they're pretty much all the same game.
Yeah.
It's all the same
well,
concept.
I'll hold that thought then, assuming that I haven't remembered that correctly.
I just based on what I was noticing when I was playing the last couple of weeks, it didn't seem like it happened unless it takes longer than 2 weeks to form a dirt path. But I don't know.
Yeah, from what I remember, and now whether this was the GameCube one or the Wii one, was that it was a long period sort of effect, or it's if you ran back or forth for a few days, it wouldn't really have an effect, but if you were constantly doing it, it would.
Yeah, and so that's the feature where if you, at least in later ones, I think, where if you run back and forth over the same grass patches, it'll eventually turn to dirt.
Yeah.
I think forever.
Yeah.
I think
Really?
that was a permanent change.
Yeah, I remember getting mad at my sister once or twice because she would be running around ruining the grass. But I think that's also something that they've addressed in the new one, where you can actually put down custom
Tiles, was it?
like
Something.
paths,
Yeah.
different materials and stuff.
Yeah, and with the new Horizons, it looks like they're really embracing letting the player do that on a high level to
Yeah.
very minute details, which is good because I think that's what people really wanted.
Yeah, it only took 15 years.
Yeah.
Oh, never late than not.
So I find the graphics in this game to actually be really charming in a lot of spots. Like all the furniture is like actually very detailed for a game
Oh yeah.
that was originally on the N64. I think this is actually really impressive for if I mean, again, I haven't played the N64 version, but assuming that most of the furniture and the graphics were pretty similar in that one, it's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I remember like starting a game and I was like blown away at like all the little like minute details. Like for instance, eventually after a while, if you haven't played in a while, you get cockroaches in your house that you can like kill just running over them. That really like adds to the persistence
I
of the
think
game.
part of what makes the game so charming is its really good use of color.
Yeah,
Oh, definitely.
It's not
even the
afraid to,
seasons.
yeah, it's not afraid to throw out some nice bright colors and sometimes wacky combinations of them too.
I mean, it's cute. If this were on, say the Xbox, we might have had photorealistic animals, and this
Oh
raccoon
God.
is a shopkeeper, and it might not have aged as well here, but
It would not have
uh,
worked.
No.
I can
but
say with certainty this game would not work photorealistic graphics.
You're talking the difference between Conker's Bad Fur Day and Conker Live and Reloaded. Ugh.
Yeah.
but I think the art style they've chosen for the series, starting at the beginning, I mean, it's even the new ones are more of an evolution of the same style. Definitely adds to their relaxing nature of the game.
Yeah, like again, it just goes back to the overall tone and what the game was meant. I guess for the audience, it's supposed to be just relax and just chill, maybe played a few
I think
minutes or
one of my
whatever.
favorite effects in the world actually was the rain. It was always very relaxing, just the ambient sound, the way that you'd see the drops. It was a nice way to represent it. Where they could have just sort of made a flatter, like, not seeing the effects or in real time. It could have just been a switch and palette, and that could have been it.
I remember going to the islands the first time and being blown away, like, oh my god,
A
like this
rich
is
kid with his Game Boy here.
oh boy, you know it. It was like going from, I guess, the forest area that your town is in, and then going to a more tropical setting and seeing, like, oh, this is nice.
Yeah, so the Animal Island in this one is a really strange inclusion to me. This is one of those ones where it seemed like Nintendo was really trying to push their their special hardware capabilities where hey, you can plug in your Game Boy Advance if you have the special cable that nobody has. I happened to be able to try it once when I was a kid, and I don't remember it really adding a lot to the experience.
I'm pretty sure there were also e-cards for it to add another layer of complexity and stuff you're never going to own as a child.
I think you're right.
Yeah,
I think you're right.
but I mean, it was an interesting idea. It's actually a feature that came back in New Leaf, although you didn't have to have the Game Boy Advance plug into your Nintendo 3DS. Um, and there, it was a great feature. Basically, the idea was that it was always summer on the island, and so you could always
Yep.
find fish and
Mhm.
bugs there. So maybe if it was winter, you could go get some of those, but it was just hugely inaccessible to the average player.
Uh, Apparently, one of the rarest occurrences in the game on GameCube was that when you're traveling to this island, there was this absolutely tiny chance that there would be a giant fish shadow underneath you as you rode over there.
I remember seeing this.
Then you were crazy lucky then. I mean, apparently it's like percentages of like a percent. Like it's nothing, but it would take up essentially the entire screen space at the moment. You couldn't interact with it, and it was sort of like a subtle shadow, but it was there. There's like I think one video of it online, but it
What a
was a
tease.
neat little thing that they did.
If I saw that as a kid, that would haunt me for the rest of my days. I would be like, guys, we gotta go down to the ocean. There's a giant fish I gotta catch. How about that? It'd be like Moby Dick.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot of very interesting little quirks and interactions in this game, and you can definitely tell that the people who made it just they put a lot of love and a lot of care into it.
Yeah, I think another more common one that you would see was Gulliver floating by if you were boating over there.
Classic Gulliver.
Oh, so I want to go back to because this was originally on the N64 released in Japan. I believe when they imported for the GameCube, I think they still kept in the feng shui code.
Yeah, I think that's still in there. And so that dictates, I can't tell you exactly how it is, but so basically when you're laying out your furniture, you want, this is just like an example. This is probably not exactly it, but you want all your orange color furniture on the east side, like all your green color furniture on the west side, and like blue and red on north and south, or something to that effect.
Yeah, along those lines. Yeah,
And I can't remember what would happen if you did that. But there was something special.
You finally get a good review.
yeah.
Get 1 million points at the HRA.
I think it's like the whole principle on like luck and like helping improving your character's like I guess luck of things around the village, like finding items or finding the rock that once you strike it, it goes gold and you just get money bags from it.
I mean, if that's true, if that's how it works, then that's an impressively
Right?
deep
Complex.
mechanic, yeah, that they've added to this game without telling anyone.
It sounds
'Cause
familiar.
I for sure did not know that was something that existed.
Oh, I didn't know that while I was playing it. That was like something found on the internet.
I know the concept of feng shui is mentioned in the game. That I remember like vividly, kid, because being like, "What on earth is this?"
I think it's like a dialogue thing that one of the villagers tells you. It's like, oh yeah, you're
Yeah.
about this thing about feng shui.
Yeah, I think
Oh,
that's
okay, yeah.
all right. Well, maybe from there we can move on a couple trivia bits here. We've already gone over like a ton because this game is like has so many little things about it. But
Super deep.
yeah, when they were localizing this game, they actually had to change a bunch of the holidays that were in the Japanese version. And some of those holidays that they had there were Coming of Age Day, Seven Spring Herbs Day, Bean Throwing Festival, and Festival of the Weaver, among others. So obviously, I can't tell you what any of those are. So when they brought it over for the Western release, they added things like Groundhog Day, Valentine's Day, Harvest Festival or Thanksgiving, and April Fool's Day. So you can definitely tell they did a lot more than just translating the dialogue into English.
Wasn't Christmas called Gift Day or something?
Toy Day, I think.
Yeah.
Toy Day, yeah.
Well, that's an interesting question. Well, it raised an interesting question for me because I know after the success of the release on GameCube in North America, they actually re-released it in Japan again for the GameCube. So I wonder if they took any of the events and stuff they made from the American one, and then now the ultimate deluxe GameCube one is just only in Japan.
I think it is a Japanese release only, but I can't say if it had the holidays. But interesting that you mentioned that because that version, which is called, well, shoot, it has a Japanese name, which I think is Dobutsu no Mori E Plus. So the E Plus is what signifies the special edition, and that had all kinds of e-reader functionality. But it also had a really interesting mechanic that didn't uh, see the light of day, or didn't come to the rest of the series until New Leaf, which was you could actually build like signposts or lampposts through Tom Nook around the town. You could build like these little structures all over the place, which they never let you do until New Leaf, which is interesting.
Man, that would have been handy.
Yeah, well, it's like a little way to personalize your town for sure.
Yeah.
Another thing was, so this game, as we've mentioned a bunch, was originally on the N64, and obviously the N64 didn't have an internal clock system, so every cartridge of the original Dobutsu no Mori actually has a battery-operated like clock inside of it to simulate the functions, which is interesting.
I wonder if those are still running.
I can't imagine. All right, so I got some questions I'm going to ask you guys. I'll start with Cam. What do you think makes this game so enjoyable? Like, why do you think this like relatively kind of small like life simulator animal village game? Like, how did it get such a huge following? How did we get here?
So as much as I've bashed it for its uniqueness and its the way it works with the calendar system, I do think that is generally part of it, and I think a lot of it is also just the charm of it. I mean, the charm of any Animal Crossing character, even if you don't know the name of them, is so instantly recognizable, and prior to why it's such a large IP for Nintendo right now. Um, it's super charming. You can go in, you can drop in and drop a couple hours if you want, and then you can come back tomorrow. You can come back next week. It doesn't really matter when you come back to play it. The game is kind of always there for you, even though it's constantly evolving and changing as the days go by. And there's something about that that's addictive. Something about looking at what the future holds or what the next day will bring. Right? It's the same thing that I think has made a lot of recent mobile games so popular, right? Is you just put a little bit of a wait period on the next thing happening, and it kind of ensures that people come back to see what's going on.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that those are all super good points. And I think, like you said, like I think the accessibility for this game is what like makes it so big. I know a lot of people who aren't really into video games but are into Animal Crossing
Yeah.
because it's just, it's something easy.
To steal a point from Evan, it is like also just super chill, and you can really just kind of relax and sit down with it.
Yeah,
Go
absolutely.
fishing.
Go at your own
Go
pace.
fishing, run around, do some errands, enjoy yourself.
Take out weeds. It's like life, virtually.
I can't tell you the last time I picked a weed out of my backyard though. So
Fair.
anyway, so Evan, I know you've been talking about Harvest Moon and Stardew Valley a bunch already, but how do you feel this game kind of stacks up to those other games, I guess, in this same genre?
I think that it really does hold a unique position even within similar company. It like I said earlier, it's less pressing than those games. There's less you know instant objectives to do, and while those are both absolutely relaxing games and easygoing, I still think they're more stressful than Animal Crossing is. I think it really holds a unique position where there's almost no pressure when you're playing it. It's absolutely an escape. It's something you can play for 10 minutes and get as much out of it as if you played for 3 hours. It's
Yeah,
there's nothing that you need to do when you play it, and I think it because of that has a unique position in the industry.
It's sort of a cool thought because there are other games like it, but at the same time, there really isn't anything like it. It is
Yeah.
totally a game all by itself in its own air. It really is unique.
yeah, and it's worth mentioning that something like Stardew Valley was definitely heavily influenced by this game and the series as a whole.
Oh, absolutely. There's definitely been games who have been influenced and taken sort of notes from it. It's a long-standing franchise, but I think in terms of even emulating a clone of it or something, I haven't seen one that comes close.
Yeah, and I think that probably just speaks to really the brilliance of this game. Like it probably wasn't as simple as it seems. There's really probably a lot more going on with the actual philosophy of it that isn't so easily recreated.
Absolutely. I mean, I think when the original creator had designed it, what was his name? I think it was Katsuya Eguchi. Uh, he had recently moved to Tokyo, working for Nintendo, and this game was his sort of, he missed this feeling of community in this big city, so he created Animal Crossing as it was then to have this sort of community focus where it's like you don't want to be stressed out, you don't want to have things to do. You just want to have some people to talk to, get along with, do some little errands and stuff. And I think that's a sort of a mindset that people creating games aren't going for anymore, and even people playing games. I mean, clearly the series now is considerably large in terms of its following, but there's not that many games that come out that hit that same mark, or that are being made that hit that mark.
That could also speak to why it's so popular nowadays, is because that feeling that he would have had moving from his small hometown to Tokyo and losing that lots of community could also relate to the way that generally with the ever growing global internet and global community, your kind of local community also has shrunk, right? And everybody kind of lives online and has all sorts of information about the world and the news right at their fingertips with your phone sitting in your hand. That
Yeah,
maybe just being
it's
able to disconnect and just kind of chill out in your own little village is kind of nice in the same way that he found a release.
yeah, it's almost the perfect escapism game.
Hmm.
Yeah, I think those are all super good points. Got one more question here. This one's from Mark. So I know you played this, I guess probably like most of us did when we were pretty young, but
Yep.
how do you think it kind of holds up to play it like from the start at this point in the year 2020?
I think like when I done the emulator and opening up for the first time and getting it to work, yeah, I had a smile on my face. Like it just brought back so many nostalgia coming back to playing this game, and like, memories of here and there of like moments that I've had personally playing this game just like flooded in. It's like, oh yeah, I remember, going to this museum, like digging up fossils and whatnot. And I think like nowadays, like there's not a whole lot of like relaxing games, so I definitely think it holds up to that aspect. I mean, I haven't played, the future titles. I definitely want to play New Horizons, especially more so now after playing the GameCube. But like, it was just fun. It was just fun to just lay back, run around, do some errands, even if I have to pay bills, but whatever, and
Yeah.
just chill.
Now, I will say that, having played the newer ones and even just, currently gaming in general, well, I think the sort of the atmosphere of the game holds up fairly well. There are a lot of mechanics in the game that definitely have aged, and we've talked about them already. The menu system, the ways that you have to do things one at a time in some cases. There's a lot of that kind of stuff that I don't think is held up very well, but
Like how you have to mail your fossils to the museum.
yeah, and
Yeah.
and, that's something that they changed in the next release, right? Or
Oh, that's good.
in City Folk, at least, they changed that, so there's clearly things that aren't very, uh, modern in terms of game design,
Of course.
and, it shows that they've changed it themselves, in later releases. So, if I were to, like, tell someone, "Hey, you should play this game," I'm not sure I would give them the GameCube release. I might give them
Oh yeah, no
the
way.
City Folk, where you still get a lot. That's the thing. Each new one, you still get that same experience in a sense, that same energy, that same ambience, the same relaxation,
I guess at its core, it's all just the same game.
but they've all made their own improvements. So I
Right.
think it's hard to recommend to someone to play the original, except out of curiosity, when there's the alternative to play newer ones.
Which is kind of nice, right?
There's absolutely no way I would play this on a daily basis, like as a pro, like air quotes, pro gamer for Animal Crossing.
As a capital G gamer in 2020.
Yeah.
Definitely, I would agree. I feel like this game in particular feels kind of obsolete at this point, which is kind of unfortunate, but
Yeah.
it's not all bad because, like you said, you can just go play the newer ones, which you'll get a lot of the similar gameplay loops and a lot of the same experience, just
Yeah,
with more content.
I think nostalgia really has a
Yeah,
place
like
for
nostalgia
the
is just the
enjoyment
big
of the
thing.
original.
I think it's also nice that you can kind of just skip to the newest one, right? You don't even like if you were to just start with Animal Crossing on Friday, right? Like my full recommendation would just be just go play the newest one. Like don't
Yeah, you
even
don't
worry
have to
about the previous
play
ones.
through the whole series to enjoy the story or something,
Yeah, there's no canon.
Well, there almost is, but that's a separate
Yeah.
discussion. But
If you were to really love New Horizons that much, then maybe go back. But it
I'd
sounds like they're
argue
going to be
not.
constantly updating New Horizons. So I wouldn't imagine you'd have the time or the capacity to play that much Animal Crossing.
And the accessibility too.
So stay tuned for our New Horizons discussion.
Yeah, let me go buy a Switch.
no, sorry. Actually, stay tuned for our Wild World episode where we cover basically all the same points.
Amiibo Festival here soon.
Yeah. Definitely. You guys have mentioned how this game is definitely has a lot of nostalgia for everyone present, and I think that's a large part of why we hold it in such high regard, which is not a bad thing necessarily.
I think that after talking about it for the last hour and a half, it's clear that we all really enjoy this game. And as much as I don't think I could recommend it to someone to play now as a entire game experience, maybe just to see what it was like, but not to, play through in place of something else. I still think at the time it was an incredible game. It absolutely hit the mark that it was trying to. It was entirely unique in the gaming space.
And I think that's important for games
Yeah.
that do something new and creative. And even if they get left behind, it's still important that it happened in the first place. I mean, it really did set a whole directive.
Yeah, so I don't think
Agreed.
it necessarily stands up, but in the moment when it came out, it was top of its class.
Yeah, it's an important game. It's set an entire kind of legacy of further releases, and also some contemporaries like Stardew Valley,
Yeah,
which
absolutely.
was definitely good for gaming as a whole, I think. But I think that's it for us. I think that's gonna wrap it up. So thanks so much for joining me, guys.
Thank you.
Yeah, no problem.
Y'all can catch us on the next episode where we're going to be discussing the first Bioshock game. And so this is Game Dive. Thanks for listening.
Bye bye.
Later.